remember, Nanette, when I first met you, I just was so excited to start my residency at Emory. And I remember sending you an email and saying that, I'm interested in cardiology, I'd like to meet with you. And I remember feeling nervous about emailing you, but then the minute I walked into your office and your warm smile, and you were just so kind. I was an intern first month at Emory, and you were just extremely supportive, and you said, you can do this if you want to do cardiology, and ever since then, you've been an amazing mentor to me.
Well, looking at it from the other side of the desk, perhaps you don't realize how excited I was to say here was a new intern who was a woman when we were still trying to increase the number of women in medicine, and who was interested in where my world lives, in cardiology. And I said, this is someone that we want to get into our cardiology training program, and we want to keep her. And we've done that.
That's right. And, we've seen this program sort of grow so much over the years.
As you know, anyone who has been mentored realizes how valuable that mentoring has been and just passes it on.
And you've seen such amazing changes in medicine over the past, the decades that you've been in medicine. Tell me a little bit about how you got into medicine in the first place. What drew you to it?
You have to realize that my father's sister was a surgeon in Europe, so that when people talk to two of my daughters who are physicians, they say they're the third generation women physicians. So it's not surprising in our family, but if we are going to do good quality medical care and medical research, we have to encompass the entire population. We're beginning to do that. We have a long way to go. But when I started my clinical practice and research and teaching at Grady Memorial Hospital, and someone said women doctor, if it wasn't a pediatrician or an OBGYN, I knew they were talking about me, and it was the lady doctor. The wonderful thing about it is that no longer distinguishes anybody, because we now have a sizable number of women in all of the specialties of medicine, and women doing stunning things in education, in community outreach, in research. Name the area, there are women involved, and very importantly, there are now women involved in legislation and public policy. And the women will be certain to look to the needs of women.
Well, I was always very interested in science growing up. And as you know, I grew up in India till I was 12 years old. And I was just very interested in science and investigation, but I really wanted to help people. And my parents get, credit for really being supportive, amazing parents. And when we moved to the United States, I knew I wanted to go into medicine, but I didn't know that I wanted to do women's heart health. And this is where mentoring really, is such a key factor, because after I met you, and you've just, so inspiring, you've inspired so many. But, just realizing, because, that education in medical school is not really there to recognize sex differences. But thankfully, because I was a resident at Emory, and you had brought up these points during our clinic, because I had clinic with you for 7 years at Grady. And so, to be able to kind of be aware of these differences that exist. And my curiosity was always there for research, so that's how I ended up doing research in women's heart disease and sex differences.
One of the luxuries that we have in academic medicine is teaching students and trainees. And the luxury is that you have the opportunity to teach them not just the facts, but to teach them how to deliver care. But then there comes the fact that students and trainees ask the most challenging questions. And I find that often at the end of a session with students, I'm going back to say, did I remember this correctly? Do we have the answer? And if not, to suggest to the student, here is your next research project.
And that's what I love about academic medicine, actually. That's what drew me to stay in academics, is the fact that you really have to stay on your toes, because when you are teaching, residents, interns, students, you not only have to know your material, but they come to you and challenge you with questions. So that, that helps you with your lifelong learning, which is key.
Very
if you're
much
going to be
so.
a good doctor. What kind of advice would you give to younger trainees who are embarking their career in healthcare today?
Well, I expect the first bit of advice is to value yourself, because you've gotten to the point where you are because you are skilled, you have learned, and you have something to contribute. So value yourself. And then find something that interests you, where you think there's a very important question to be answered, and go about answering it. And it may be very different for you than for the person sitting at the desk next to you, but do something that ignites your passion, where you say, this is really an important issue, and I want to help contribute to the information base for it.
That's right, because medicine is a long road. It takes years and years of training, and so you really have to be passionate about what you're doing and about the work to be able to get up every day and know that you're making a difference. And that really is the key. And also being resilient with challenges, as challenges come, to be able to rise to that and problem solve. I think those are all important sort of critical, skills to be able to work in our challenging healthcare system today.